Yes, my name's Chris Short. I'm from the Countryside Community Research Institute based at the University of Gloucestershire. I'm also currently the chair of the Foundation for Common Land, so we're a bit of a takeover session towards the end of the day here. Why am I talking about Norway? That's because I'm delighted enough to have a joint project with a research institute in Norway, and they're looking to the UK to solve some of their issues and challenges around managing commons. And I'll leave that there, and hopefully that will become a little evident as we come through. So I'm going to here we go. So I'll talk about Norway and land uses, types of common, current challenges, a little bit of innovation. I've got a video for you and some photos. So there we go. We must be towards the end of the day. And then what lessons we can take. Okay, I won't insult your intelligence by putting up a map of Norway, much as I love maps, being a geographer. But I do like a good flag. So Norway is small in population, 5 million people, bear that with the UK, which is sort of 75. It's considerably bigger than the UK, or a fair amount bigger. And top to north is sort of 1,600 miles. 1% of that land area is urban, and 4/5 of the population live in that 1%. So it's a very urban nation. And yet they have a very strong attachment as a nation to their countryside. Second homes are fairly normal. Sort of third or fourth homes is not unheard of. 3% of that land is cultivated. So bear in mind we're 70% rural, and of that 70% is agriculture. So two very different sets of land uses. They have more open water at 10% than they do agricultural land. Okay, so 38% open ground, basically mountain. If you're looking then at agriculture, you would think, oh, it's not very important. Actually, very important to them as a nation. So 30% of that land is arable and vegetables. They're 50% self-sufficient. We're rapidly heading that way in our self-sufficiency, but they are 80 to 90% self-sufficient for meat. And they do like a good bit of meat. 40,000 farmers, 2 million sheep. Some common breeds there, if you like, or sheep breeds. That's a white face, a short tail, and going left to right, and an alland, which is if you get the closest thing between a cross between a sheep and a goat, that was it. It's sort of traditional Scandinavian sheep. What amazed me, because I was there, part of the reason for saying I was there for a week in September. They average 3 lambs per ewe. Now, most sheep farmers I know will be absolutely delighted with that, and they're good, strong sheep too. They're not. They can take you out, shall we say? So, types of common. What are their common? Their commons are widespread. Okay, state land used to be the normal for Norway. And so, as a result, 1/3 of their land area is effectively, they calculate, is under state commons. Because the state was dominant landowner from the 16th century onwards, and these are managed by commons boards, very organised, users, owners. The more productive commons, a little bit like our feudal link that we had in the talk this morning, they're parish or municipal commons. They tend to be very actively managed for forestry. Some of the more interesting stuff gets around the farm commons. This is areas which are outside, usually above the tree line in the mountains. And these are joint ownership, the percentage changes. And if you track through history, it's often changed. I didn't know whether to take this comment seriously, but when I met some of the farmers, yes, you can track it seriously. It often had a strong link to poker games. So you betted on your share of your common grazing in the sort of 15th, 16th, 17th century. It tends to have gone out of favour a little bit. But so you can own 50% of the mountain or 5%. And this, where's my pointer here, this is a picture of a mountain area above the tree line, and that is 10,000, 20,000 hectares, and that land is shared between 15 owners. And it's linked to the home farm. So this is where the sheep go to graze in summer. So I had a treat to meet. This is Ola in the centre, and Valberg, farming couple based in central Norway. And they can trace their farm back to 1600. And as an aside, Ola is his name, and his grandfather was called Ola, and his grandfather's great-great-grandfather was called Ola. And so they alternate the names. A very fertile valley. He has 130 ewes and grazes arable. And they go back, so I'll just snip, but this is the summer grazing for the cattle. I've got a more detailed picture, and you work out what on earth they eat. They're up between May and September. And this is a restored winter hunting lodge. I don't know if you fancy staying up there in the depths of Norway for a month if you're hunting reindeer and elk. I wouldn't. So they share this land that they graze up there with sort of various hunters. There's a tourist trail, reindeer and elk. It's not even a protected landscape, strangely enough, although they have standards, but it's quite a stunning landscape at 1,500 metres. So this is what they graze. And if you're wondering, those photos have a strange green hue to them. That's because it's a carpet of lichen. It's a very varied diet for a sheep of bilberry, juniper, crowberry, lichen, moss, and they're extremely healthy. Mind you, Ola's face, it said my face was a picture when I went round the corner, and there's some suckler cows grazing up there as well. So very diverse, very beautiful landscape. And so I said, well, what are your challenges? Why have you got a project that you're trying to struggle about your commons management? Commons management becoming increasingly complex, they find. It's no longer just about grazing. Now, I began to hear some very familiar messages. Poor communication between different bodies and stakeholders. Farmers worried about the hassle that it takes them to graze. That they don't feel that they're listened to. They don't feel in control of the way the directions are going. And so they're saying, is it worth me putting up with this hassle, and so I can just look after my home farm? Conservationists are very worried, because if you have reduced grazing, then you have declining biodiversity. If you have increased grazing, you have declining biodiversity. Some of the new issues they're coming up with, wind power is increasingly popular, second homes, or a different type of second homes users, people who are not used to the hunting traditions, taking over the management there. The aspiration of government, farmers, most of it is this sustainable management of these mountain areas. So they've been trying to rethink some of the ways that they do things. I think it's the long, dark nights. But they have a very interesting approach to innovation. So one of the things they talked about, this project, which I'm involved with, this is funded from quite an interesting pot. They've taken a very small proportion of the agricultural support measure, and they put it into these difficult challenges area. And on the board of the people who decide how this money is spent are the farmers, the government, the recreation use it, the conservationists, all the users, and they sit and they agree, well, what are our current challenges? And so the majority agree, so commons, they've decided, is one of their challenges. So they said, right, well, we need to understand and we need to find a better way of doing this. So they set up the research project. There's another one on predators, which is something else we don't, in the sheep terms, we don't need to worry about so much. So that's one idea. I thought, what a brilliant idea. And so the people who do this work have to feed back directly to all of these different users. So it's, well, I would say as an academic, a transdisciplinary research project. And here comes up the video. So the other one is they've got a very interesting approach to technology. So hopefully this will work. You're here. If we click on this, we should go to YouTube.
Jeg begynte å tenke på om man kunne kutta ut gjerder når jeg var i min ungdom, for jeg så at gjerdene var uheldige for dyra.
Ever since the domestication of animals in early agricultural history, man has tried to control and limit their motion range, from manual herding to building fences. Fences require considerable maintenance, and construction is driven by high cost. This material and time-consuming process has left vast areas with potential pastures overgrown and untouched. What if we could utilize this natural resource for future food production? Let nature decide where animals can graze. We started 10 years ago as a group of farmers and engineers with a simple idea: bringing modern technology and traditional farming together. What we created is the world's first virtual fence system for grazing animals, improving agriculture, animal welfare, and the environment all at once. No Fence is an innovative and cost-efficient system, enabling farmers to use the full potential of their land and animals. Our grazing technology consists of a solar-powered GPS collar and a digital boundary that is transferred to the animal's collar. The collar uses the mobile phone network to communicate with our web portal, an easy-to-use mobile application. Simply define the area and build your virtual fence. The fence can easily be adjusted or moved, giving animals access to new areas and healthy pastures whenever you decide. If an animal should wander off, a beeping sound will start warning the animal it's moving out of its grazing area. Should it ignore the beeping sound, a weak but effective electric shock will be given as a last resort. Our technology also enables farmers to follow their animals' movements and receive notifications if anything unexpected should occur. Through our revolutionary approach, farmers can now save time, energy, and money, and give animals access to healthy and varied pastures. With over 2 years of large-scale testing, we have successfully proved function, along with good animal welfare. Now we've begun to develop our solution for the cattle industry. We're just getting started, and we want you to join our journey.
We'll stop it there.
Allowing animals to use the
Well, hopefully you got the gist of that in the end. But basically a GPS, an app, building a virtual fence. As farmers can sit and rest, have a cup of coffee. I'm sure all the commoners here will be delighted with that idea. And then they receive a notification when an animal strays outside the area. So they're testing it on cattle. And obviously there's a lot of interest about this because actually that would enable a completely different sort of grazing. So some really interesting technology that they're looking at. So just lastly to round up. So what lessons? Firstly, the issue of communication clearly is evident there. It's been evident in much about what we've talked about here. It makes really good, really fascinating history, as we heard in the morning session. The current issues are mostly, and much of it, around communication, as Jenny was saying, and evident in the rest of them they're talking about, is issue of shared problem solving is, for me, by far the most effective means of tackling this. Really doing some thinking outside the box, and I think that's part of communication. People with a passion for the forest, maybe different perspectives, sharing challenges, and then coming up with some really innovative ideas. Absolutely fundamental for me is appreciating what you have. The reason the Norway is interested in us in the UK is they said, oh, you've got this 2006 Commons Act. So when I went over them and talked to them about what the foundation was doing, they were saying, well, surely if you've got an act, why do you need the foundation? I said, well, acts only get you so far. Commons are complicated, it's multifaceted, and legislation is a very blunt instrument. So it only really deals with a single issue. And so what you need is a combination of both. So this self-governance, as you're doing here in the forest, is really important. Most of those that I mentioned the farm commons, forgot it at the time, but They don't know how many farm commons there are, even in a country like Norway. They don't know that relationship. So we know so much more, the British psyche of creating lists and counting and ordering has its own issues, but it also is exceedingly useful. And the last thing is this issue of sharing knowledge and experiences. And I think events like this are just fantastic, coming together, making a long time for lunch and break, so you can do all this networking, catching up. The conversation's been really valuable. So this process, don't stop, keep carrying on, talking, sharing, experiencing, valuing what it is that you have, because telling me you miss it when it's gone. Okay, and that's that for me. Thank you very much.
Move!